Welcome. We are a mother-daughter podcast about all things surrogacy. Together, we have brought 8 beautiful babies into this world, and we would like to share through education and knowledge about surrogacy with those who want to educate themselves on the topic. This is Stop.Sit.Surrogate.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Stop.Sit.Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen. Today we have a fellow surrogate who's going to tell us her story and then some. So take it away. Go introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I delivered a beautiful little surrogate baby girl last March. She just turned a year a couple weeks ago. And I have had a lot of experience through the surrogate journey, going different routes with matching and through agencies, and then a lot of experience with breast milk. And I went through an experience that a lot of surrogates do where the intended parents no longer wanted breast milk, and I continued pumping and providing milk for over 13 babies.
Wow.
And fed one baby for an entire year and another for another 6 months, and made some good money doing that as well. So just wanted to share my story, give some advice, some tips about how to do that. And then I also run a matching group on Facebook to help match surrogates and intended parents for breast milk. So I'm very
Oh
passionate and making sure that the
my
babies
gosh.
get fed and that the surrogates can
Wow.
find people to give their milk to. So yeah.
Look at these little hidden gems you've
That's
kept to
cool.
yourself. I'm gonna go off on my first tangent. Sorry, I just want to ask. Like, do you just overproducer of milk? Because I mean, like, I couldn't produce a dang drop. So yeah.
Yes. So day 3, I probably pumped like 48 ounces, and then
Wow.
from there 80 ounces, and then from there like 100 plus ounces. So I definitely produced a lot, and that was like a concern for me because when I found out the family no longer needed milk, they lived
Yeah.
across the country, so it was really expensive to ship.
Got it.
Yeah.
I didn't want it all to go to waste, and I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that I did get compensated for it. So that was, kind of a struggle, was figuring out
Yeah.
how to go about finding a new family for the milk and not wasting all of it. Yeah.
Wow.
Is
Okay,
that
we're
how
gonna jump.
I'm gonna go one more.
Oh,
Stop.
Ellen.
Is that how the Facebook group got started? You can just say yes or no and we'll talk about it later.
Sorry, you cut out. What did you
Okay.
say?
Is because the family didn't want the milk or no longer needed it and it was expensive to ship. Is that how this Facebook matching group came about? You can just
Yeah.
okay.
hmm
We'll
There
talk
was
about
a
that
Yeah,
later.
there was a group that existed previously, but I had requested to join it and I was waiting for like 9 months before I got approved. So I
Wow.
wanted to make something else that allowed, that to happen. A lot of surrogates will go to their agencies
Yeah.
Yeah.
and see if they have other parents looking for milk, and that's usually it's not a
Right.
thing. So it can be very hard to find
Yeah.
places to give your
Interesting.
milk to.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we're gonna dive into that in a bit.
Yeah.
How did you find out about surrogacy to
Yeah.
begin with?
I was very young, like
Okay.
probably 10 years old or something when I first heard about surrogacy. And I, growing up, used to watch all types of YouTube videos on people going through IVF journeys and infertility and everything. So it became something I was very passionate about. My ultimate career goal is to go to medical school and become a reproductive endocrinologist, but that's like
Wow.
years down the line. I have to go through medical school, residency, fellowship to do that. So
Wow.
I wanted to, figure out a way to be involved in an industry I was passionate about. And I just have always thought it would be the coolest thing. And, I've had friends ask me growing up, like, oh, if I couldn't have a baby, would you carry it for me? And I said, absolutely, like, no question.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's just always been something that came naturally to me. I figured if I was blessed to be able to have a healthy baby, that it's something I'm so passionate about, making sure that people can grow their families, that it was
Oh.
just a given for me to do it.
Oh my gosh. So
So
did
so
you
you're
know someone then
yeah,
when you
that's what
were
I was gonna
10?
ask.
Or like you just like heard it through the grapevine, you're like,
That's
this
young.
hooked me.
That's young.
I really don't know. I don't know the exact situation in which I found out about it.
Yeah.
But there was this lady Shannon Rose on YouTube, and she shared her whole IVF journey and everything, and I was super invested. And she has two beautiful babies now. And then Harmony, Harmony, I think her last name is Jones on YouTube. She shared her whole surrogacy journey. So just a lot of good content creators out there that shared and were vulnerable online that helped me learn
Wow,
about it.
Very
that's really
cool.
cool. Yeah.
That's very cool.
So
Do
did
you
you
have
go with an agency or or did you go
So
independent?
I actually used I didn't I was looking at lots of different agencies. I was applying to a bunch of different agencies. I really did not know which one to choose. My biggest concern was the match.
Yeah.
I was scared
Mm.
to onboard to an agency and just be like presented one option
Right.
and feel guilted into going with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually used Nodal to match
Oh,
with my intended parents. I was actually the third Nodal delivery, so the third Nodal baby,
wow.
yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, so it was actually a really smooth process with that. I had no preference on going independent or with an agency
Okay.
on that platform. I loved that we had the ability to choose whether to do either one. And really, my focus was just the parents that I was going to work with because
Yeah.
these would be people in my life for the rest of my life, hopefully.
Right.
So yeah, on Nodal, it lets you see all of the intended parents platforms,
Wow.
profiles, and then I really got to like choose who I wanted to work with. So my intended parents actually, I was waiting on there for a little bit, and then their profile got posted that
Mhm.
day, and I matched with them same day. Yeah, I just fell in love with
Oh,
them. They were so
oh, how
cute.
Oh.
fun.
And yeah, so then from there, they were actually kind of already onboarding to an agency,
Okay.
and we agreed to go with that one. Their clinic requires agency and only has three options, so we went
Okay.
with that one. And yeah, so we ended up, going through a pretty big agency for the actual journey management.
So
Okay.
then, what? Because I know about Nodal. We've talked to them, and
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
oh God, I've been on this journey for like 3 years. So like
Okay.
my first year, I was like, hey,
Yeah.
let's do this. It didn't work out, unfortunately. But I do like their platform. I like how you can match. It's very nice. It's very forward. It's very like this is who the people are, and you
Mhm.
get told if they're like you back. And but with your next step
Mm.
of going to an agency,
Yeah.
so then you it my understanding of that is like did you have like your own coordinator at that agency? Like did you have a person like advocating for you and the couple had one advocating for them because you came from Nodal? I'm confused. Like,
So our actual experience with the agency we went with was the same as anybody going with that agency. So it'd be
Okay.
similar to people who found an independent match and are still working with an agency. Nodal, I was pre-screened through them. So I had all of my
Right.
records reviewed by a nurse, a doctor, and then I also met with a maternal fetal medicine specialist just to make sure I was fully like low risk and cleared. I had They already collected all of my insurance info, background checks, all of that. So that information was just passed along to the agency.
Okay.
Nodal at that point, not sure what they currently do, but they didn't do their own psych eval. So I did that with the agency we onboarded to. So
Got it.
I had to get cleared through the agency we worked with still, but it
Mm.
was a quicker, easier
Quicker,
process since
right.
we were already matched, already agreed on everything,
Okay.
and all my records were there. So it
Yeah.
was a pretty quick onboarding process. Of course, um, if you're a surrogate trying to do the quickest route possible, which I know a lot of girls are when they're going into it,
Yeah.
that's a slightly, like, maybe a few weeks of a delay to going through getting medical screening
Mhm.
scheduled, because I had to go through Nodal, match through them, then on board to an agency.
Right.
Okay.
But that's very cool though. I like that. So
And
then,
you got a lot of choice, and I think that would
Yes.
sway
yeah.
a lot of surrogates. Yeah. If I were
Yeah.
to do it
And
again, I 100%.
it was so cool, and it was a lot more secure than trying to do an independent match through a Facebook group or anything, because Nodal actually initiated all of the conversations about compensation, about preferences, and like facilitated those conversations.
Okay.
And then also we signed an agreement with Nodal, like a match agreement. So I couldn't, they wouldn't have just ghosted me or something after
Yeah.
that, like what could happen on, just
Yeah.
Facebook groups. So
Yeah.
that was a great experience. I loved the autonomy and I
Yeah.
appreciated being able to still work with an agency, but not having to have the limited choices of what an agency might have.
Right.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, so then how did, well, this is always an interesting question. We need to ask this more because everybody does different things. So for your meds, were you patches, were you pills, were you suppositories, were you
Hmm.
injections, were you all of them?
So our protocol, we went through NYU Langone. They have a pretty, I mean, for my doctor, we did a pretty medicated protocol.
Okay.
So I did Lupron, birth control, estrogen, did all of the initial like baseline appointments to make sure everything was good to go for the actual med protocol. And
Okay.
then once we were preparing for transfer, I continued with estrogen. I did progesterone injections and Frinone suppositories. So those are like kind of a tampon applicator with gel.
Yeah.
I didn't mind the suppositories. A lot of people hate them.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hate
I
them.
yeah, I think the some people do the like pill suppositories. Mine was like a gel. So
Okay.
it kind of like absorbed pretty well. There was like a little bit of like, weirdness to it, but no discomfort or anything, no like infections or anything.
Oh, good.
So
Okay.
that was fine with me. I had to switch once we were maybe 7 weeks into the pregnancy to just suppositories because my body did not absorb the PIO. We tried different
Mm.
oils. It was just like a bullet under my skin. Like it did not want to
Ooh.
absorb. It was very painful. So they switched me to just the suppositories for the last couple of weeks, and
Yeah.
then we were good to go from there.
Oh, there you go.
Wow. That's
Very
good.
nice.
Yeah, that is nice. So then when transfer came,
Mm.
was it one, two, how many?
Just one.
Okay.
This one, I, as a newbie girl that was really excited about like getting pregnant again, I think a lot of girls are like, oh my gosh, being pregnant with twins would be a cool experience. But then, when I actually spoke to my partner about it, he was like, no way. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way that you're gonna volunteer to carry twins. Like, and I would highly recommend that no surrogate agrees to a double transfer. Of course, Ellen has experience with
Yeah. That's way
lots
back
of
when.
embryos.
Yeah, forever ago.
Nobody knew
Yeah,
nothing back then.
yeah. I mean, Octomom happened since then and has had
Right.
8 babies at once, and they did. I think they transferred 12 embryos to her or something
Something
Yeah.
during
crazy.
that
Yeah.
cycle. Yeah. So, yeah, I would definitely like twins would be a beautiful experience
Yeah.
if it happens naturally.
Naturally.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think I really question the ethics with that. Paying somebody to put their body at extreme extra risk.
Right.
Um, Additionally, if you deliver super early with twins, you
Hmm.
can't do another journey. And
Right.
I think a lot of
Yeah.
that's something I'd warn against. A lot of girls go into the
Yeah.
journey and they will accept maybe a lower compensation than what they're actually comfortable with because they're like, oh, I'll just do it a second time. And the second
Uh,
time, I'll
yeah.
get paid like 10, 15K more as the
Right.
agencies will try to tell you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how they loop you in to do a second journey with them as well. Like, oh, the first time you'll only get this much, but the second time you'll
Second
get this
time,
much.
yeah.
So make sure you
Uh,
come back to us like within 6 months after your previous delivery.
Hmm.
Um,
wow.
so yeah, but definitely single transfer. I was not going to agree to a double.
Yeah.
And the first transfer took. So
Yay.
I got
Good.
I got dark lines within 4 days post transfer. It was
Nice.
amazing. I got so sick after the transfer. My
Oh
plane ride home was torture. It was 6 hours.
no.
Um, and we actually were stuck on the plane for 3 hours prior
No.
to it taking off because there was a flight delay
Ugh.
after we boarded.
Oh my
Oh
So
gosh.
God.
yeah, yeah, it was a nightmare back then, like
Oh.
2020. 2023 when all of the United airline flights were getting canceled. That's what I was
Yeah.
going through at the time.
Oh,
Right. Oh,
jeez.
wow.
I made it to transfer. A lot of surrogates ended up like having to reschedule their transfers and try again on the next cycle because they couldn't make it to the clinic.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
Did
But
you go to
first
New
trimester
York?
took,
Is that where you went?
yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Yep. All the way across the country. Complete opposite
Wow.
side.
Wow.
Yep.
Nuts.
Yeah.
What, did they know? Did they have eggs tested? Did they know what they were getting?
Yeah, so my experience is actually pretty unique in that too. So at Match, I actually agreed to do amnio, because the
Okay.
parents through the IVF journey found out that they were both carriers of a genetic condition. And so their embryos, it was recommended that all of their embryos get tested and they had to, pay extra to get extra testing on
Right.
it past the traditional PGT, to test for that specific condition. And
Wow.
then, because the condition is very severe, their doctors also recommended an amnio to actually get, the confirmation during pregnancy. I
Wow.
was okay with that. It was definitely a matching point. Some surrogates are not
Yeah.
communicated to that as
Mhm.
a matching point and then find out
Yep.
later, have to
Right.
go through that decision during the pregnancy. It was very transparent from the beginning.
Oh, good.
And our experience with the amnio was easy, kind of. I had to go 3 times, um,
Wait, wait,
because
whoa, whoa, whoa.
You had to
Three
get an amnio
times with
3 times?
the needle punch?
one poke,
Oh.
3 appointments.
Okay. Okay. We're
Because
done. Okay.
yeah, because they wanted to do it as early as possible
Mm,
because should they have found out that there was that genetic condition, they wanted as much time to make a decision.
got it.
Yeah.
And so the first appointment to see if they could do it was maybe 15 or 16 weeks, which is very early for an
Yeah.
amnio.
Mhm.
There was like some weird thing that's like rare because they usually don't actually like look for it, but like the membrane of the amniotic sac at some point between like when you would get a CVS versus when you would get an amnio,
Okay.
the difference between those two is that the CVS goes into the placenta and collects some, it's like a biopsy from the placenta.
Uh-huh.
The amnio is at a later point because the amniotic sac has actually merged to the uterine lining. And so prior to that, they can't actually safely poke through the sac to collect the fluid.
Gotcha.
So
Got
our
it.
goal was to be able to poke through the sac to collect the fluid, but it actually had not merged yet at that
Okay.
15, 16 point. So I had
Okay.
to go back a couple weeks later to check if it had merged yet. It hadn't.
Okay.
They also found like
Oh.
a huge hematoma at some point that like it never
Oh,
was a concern. They just
yeah.
would have
Yeah.
like probably noticed it if they weren't looking that close.
Yeah.
And then finally at maybe 19 weeks or so, we were able to do it very
Okay.
quick and easy. Just a little pressure at
Yeah.
some point. It wasn't even really painful. And then like a tiny bit of cramping the next day, but quick, easy procedure.
Okay.
And the autonomy of knowing, that
Yeah.
that was going to be the plan was important.
Did your
Yeah.
hematoma rupture or did it just
Oh
absorb?
no, I had not one touch of bleeding the whole time. So it was
Wow.
beautiful. Yeah, it was they found
Ah.
it because they looked really hard to make
Yeah.
sure that
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Yeah.
family was safe. Yeah.
Yeah. Oftentimes they just
They
go
rupture.
unnoticed and they just
Yeah.
don't even rupture or whatever. I had a
Yeah.
They
hematoma in
reabsorb.
one of my pregnancies and freaked out, and
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh no, we wait, this is that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, great. Maybe you guys could like say that up front."
Right.
But
Warn
that's
us.
good because I've
Very
seen
common.
some surrogates. There was one in my transfer group and she was on bed rest for like
Mhm.
12 weeks
Because they
just
could be
Oh,
because they
huge.
but they saw a hematoma and put her on bed rest.
wow.
There was no bleeding, there was no cramping.
Ah,
That was pretty crazy. She ended up getting a second opinion and she
ah,
was taken off bed rest
ah.
immediately and said that she never should have been on it.
Wow.
But yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. You just,
So
oh
then,
man.
how did your pregnancy go?
Yeah. Sounds like it went
It
good.
was it was great. It
Yeah.
Yeah.
was my easiest pregnancy thus far.
Aw.
Um, I had, some nausea. We did put in my contract that I would be allowed Zofran. So I that was
Good for
actually
you.
the intended mom put it in my contract because I that was a discussion and she just wanted to make sure that I could get my nausea meds because I was carrying a pregnancy for her and she
Oh,
would do it if she could and I'm sure she would have taken the meds
so
if she could
sweet.
have. So yes, yeah, that was thoughtful. So
Very
definitely
thoughtful.
had to take some Zofran here and there, but otherwise the pregnancy was easy until um
Oops.
around like I forget about this.
Oh no.
Like 31, 32 weeks, I ended up getting diagnosed with preeclampsia.
Oh,
Now it was
no.
like it was scary and everything. However, it was like the most mild case ever. Of course, it was scary for everybody involved, but my
Okay.
blood pressure like resolved after the first like 48 hours.
Okay.
My protein levels in my urine resolved. I never had any symptoms. So out of precaution, we induced at 37 weeks, but I was the lucky case where it was kind of like subclinical. I've actually had a midwife since then tell me that it's like a questionable diagnosis because it didn't persist from that
Okay.
that first instance.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, we induced a little bit early. Baby was a healthy weight. She was about 5 pounds 4 ounces at delivery.
Okay.
Uh,
Good.
yeah, and then yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
So,
Does that
yeah.
diagnosis going to preclude you from doing it again?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Good question. I know there's an opinion in the community that if you have that word on your records at
Hmm.
all at any point that you absolutely should not do another surrogacy. Um, but there are some people that get cleared for it, and I
Hmm.
think if you get cleared for it, if a doctor tells you it's fine,
Right.
then and you're comfortable with the possible risk,
Right.
then I would be comfortable doing another journey with that, especially because of the very low like subclinical
Right.
severity of mine.
Yeah.
Right.
Like never any symptoms, no vision changes, no pain, none of those symptoms that you look out for. And my blood pressures at home were
Yeah.
fine. So it's,
Oh,
maybe
interesting.
partially white coat syndrome
Right.
during my
Right.
appointments.
Yep.
And then the protein in the urine, I actually had protein in my urine during my pregnancy with my son
Hmm.
and never had any high blood pressures at all. So that was
Right.
never, a
Okay.
concern. So yeah, for me, I
Yeah.
would be comfortable doing it again if I would get cleared. My doctors have told me, that they would for sure clear me again.
Yeah.
So I would
Good.
have to, see down the line whether that was an
Okay.
option. I would
Good.
definitely do it again. I would
Yeah.
absolutely love to.
I mean, I had my last surrogate baby, like, I think like 2 days before 37 weeks, and a lot of the clinics were like, we're not going to work with you. And then I was like, well, let me tell you about my story. And then they're
Yeah.
like, oh, and they're like, well, can your OB be like, yeah, can he like confirm that? And he confirmed it. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
you're fine. Your baby was healthy. You were great. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we understand. So
It
because
should
yours
go.
didn't persist,
Right.
I would feel like
And
most
it
doctors would be like, yeah, like
And it
if your
should
Yeah.
be an
OB says it's fine.
individual case by case basis. It shouldn't
Hmm.
be just because the word appears there, just because it was
Right,
36 and 5 days. You don't know. You can't look at it on paper. You just
right.
can't. So
Yeah.
Everything's
I'm a
different.
big believer
Yeah.
in case by case. Just
Hmm.
get cleared to
Absolutely.
get
And
cleared.
also, with surrogacy, it's an agreement between independent parents and a
Hmm.
surrogate. So
Yes.
if
Hmm.
everybody makes an autonomous decision and
Yes.
understands any medical risks, then of course, outside of like complications that could seriously put the surrogate and the baby at risk, I definitely am somebody who would look further into things before, just
Yeah.
And you,
wanting to
and you
write it
also have experience making a very tough decision from how I hear it.
off.
You had a couple that genetically there
Hmm.
could have been something, and
Yeah.
maybe there could have been a reduction.
Hmm.
You were putting yourself, like I say, in harm's way, but you knew the risks and you were
Hmm.
willing to take them. So
Right.
agreed, it should be between intended parent or intended parents and surrogate. And then the
Yeah.
clinics need to just get on board. Sorry, I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's hard. It's a hard decision for intended
Yeah.
parents too, because a lot of them just want a
Yeah.
baby, will go with
Yeah.
whoever, and maybe
Right.
don't make good decisions on who to match with from there. And
Yeah.
then other times, they're kind of freaked out because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of different things that are being communicated to them all the time
Yeah.
that they're trying to weigh the options for.
For
So
sure.
yeah, it's definitely difficult.
So,
Yeah.
so how does the relationship go during the pregnancy? Do they come out? Do you go back? Like, what's
So
the?
They were across the country. Now
Yeah.
we were like best friends from the beginning, like texting back
Oh,
and forth right after we matched.
that's so cute.
Um, like texting back and forth during the agency onboarding was awesome to be able to like speak to
Yeah.
them through that process
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that we could all make sure that that was going smooth because they're paying a lot of money
Yeah.
to the agency, a lot of money.
Yeah.
So to be able to actually have those discussions and transparency was really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And then having the agency too was awesome because I did have support there. Nodal too, they have a support for you throughout your journey as a surrogate too, even if you're not like with them for their like
Oh, wow.
match management services. So I was with an agency doing their support groups. I was doing Nodal support groups. I was very
Aw,
supported during the journey. It was very
Good.
cool.
good.
Um, yeah, and then toward the end, it was definitely a bit more stressful because of the preeclampsia diagnosis. They were very just anxious. The
Yeah.
mom had gone through
Oh.
several miscarriages, failed
Mm.
transfers, and they had tried for several years to have a baby. So,
Mm.
of course, it's very anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
I had considered I was really open to who I matched with at the end. I really wanted to help a mom with infertility
Yeah.
because that is her last resort, and it's
Yeah.
it's a decision to make. Some surrogates prefer working with like a same-sex couple
Mhm.
because there's a there can be a strained relationship between an intended mother and a surrogate.
Right.
Um, Sometimes, like I know myself, if I were having a baby through surrogacy, um, it would feel like the surrogate is almost like keeping the baby from me at certain points if it was stressful, like
Sure.
that's somebody
Yeah.
else carrying your baby.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of waiting for the end to finally get your baby back. It's very
Yeah.
stressful. So that's something that I was comfortable with and wanted to be able to, be there for a woman through that
Oh.
process. Yeah. So we had the preeclampsia diagnosis.
Yeah.
I just had extra monitoring for that. Everything was good. We just, it was kind of nice planning the induction, which I didn't want an induction otherwise. I wouldn't have gotten an induction otherwise. So we
Yeah.
would have been just, on call. But it was nice. They just, flew out. Everything was going to be good. Now, the week of the induction,
Yeah.
the day that they flew out, I went in for we all went in for our last OB appointment. It was supposed to be our last OB appointment before the delivery, and the baby flipped.
Oh, head
Uh-oh.
head up now? Like feet down?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Uh-huh. And
Oh, jeez.
I that morning I had an NST where they did an ultrasound and she was head down, but she flipped
Oh my.
within those few hours. I guess
Wow. Knew
she
they
knew
were
the
coming.
parent she
Yep.
knew they were coming and she
Mhm.
wanted to cause a scene. So
Oh my gosh.
So
that
cute.
really turned things around for how the delivery was going to go
Oh
Right.
no.
because this baby it was it was a Tuesday. Let me see. Let me pull up my calendar because I need to be able to visualize the dates. It was a Tuesday
Okay.
that I had my non-stress test in the morning. I
Okay.
went to work and then I left early to go to the OB appointment.
Mhm.
And we were all just so excited. Like they were going to see the baby in person again. They had flew out for the 20-week
Yeah.
scan, and then this was their second time flying out.
Oh.
Um, Baby had flipped. So in the appointment, my OB has the ultrasound wand on my belly, and he's a very funny guy. He just says her head is up here. I'm like, what do you mean her head is up? No, it's not. Like, her head was down earlier. What are you talking about? She had
Oh.
flipped. And I didn't feel anything different.
Yeah.
She was a kicker. Like she probably bruised my insides. She kicked a
Oh.
lot. She still kicks. Like her birthday, they sent me a video and she was just kicking her legs in a circle, like going crazy.
Oh.
Yeah, probably gonna be like a gymnast or something in
Ah.
her future. But um, yeah, so that changed things a lot for what
Yeah.
the delivery could possibly look like because it was a Tuesday. The plan was to go in on Thursday night
Okay.
to
Okay.
start the induction process. Friday was going to be 37 weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
Thursday night was 36 and 6 days.
Right.
I was supposed to go into the hospital, get a Foley, or not a, what's it called?
The
A
balloon?
Cook's catheter, yeah,
Yeah.
inserted. And
Uh-huh.
then I was supposed to go home, like,
Mm.
start the induction at home and then go back in the morning. Or if I, was super in labor, just go in. That was the plan. That was the plan all along for like several weeks prior.
Wow.
Um, and then we found out that she flipped. So that was, my OB doesn't do breech delivery, and I don't think the IPs would agree to that.
Yeah.
So we were not going to plan a breech induction.
Right.
So then the first option that my OB gave was an ECV, an external cephalic version, where they
Try to
bring
move.
you to the hospital. Their protocol would be to actually give me a spinal tap to prepare for a C-section and do the ECV while I'm all, numbed up. So
Right.
if anything goes wrong, they can just rush me to
C-section.
the OR
Right.
and do a C-section real quick.
Oh,
And otherwise, they would just do the ECV and immediately start the induction while I'm there in the hospital. So that was what my OB suggested. And
mm,
now the IPs have heard about ECVs
mm.
and they have heard that there are risks to it. So they were very freaked out about that possibility. Everything was just very stressful for them. They were across the
Oh,
country just hoping to get their baby quickly. Um,
Right.
and all of this happened, just a
yeah.
couple days before the planned induction. So they really wanted me to do a C-section. I
Oh,
was I was not
yeah.
open
Yeah.
to an elective
Yeah.
C-section. My OB had even suggested to just wait, like not induce, because I don't have severe preeclampsia. Like there's no reason exactly to induce on that day at that time. So they were gonna, thinking to just wait and see if she flips.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up calling a chiropractor. I called a chiropractor.
Okay.
I got into the chiropractor appointment that night
Wow.
and I felt some funny things after that chiropractor appointment.
Huh.
And I was just so stressed. My heart rate was probably beating a
Oh,
thousand miles a minute. The parents were so stressed. They wanted a
yeah.
C-section. I didn't want a C-section. I
Yeah.
wanted to do the ECV if needed. But
Sophia, could you explain for those who don't know what an ECV is?
yes, yeah. So external cephalic version. So the hospital's protocol would be give me the spinal, I go
Mhm.
in, they essentially from the outside just
Mhm.
manipulate your belly to try to just flip the
Huh.
baby
Yeah.
around. So our idea was that it would happen easily because if she was already that mobile to where she could flip upright,
Right.
she
Yeah.
could probably flip back down. You have to have
Right.
enough fluid for it to work.
Yeah.
Some women go into it and it's very painful for them. Their bellies are very sensitive at that point,
Yeah.
and they, are not able to continue with it. They just go into a C-section. Some people try it and it doesn't work. Some people try it and the baby flips back. So there are risks to it. And then
Yeah.
the biggest risk is that my OB says he has never had that happen in his entire, like, however many years of being an OB.
Wow.
But there have been babies that have coded and had to go into emergency C-sections and had to be
Oh,
delivered emergently
is it
because
stressful? Oh,
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that the
stress.
cord is like wrapped
Yeah.
around them in a crazy way,
Right.
or the placenta is in a weird place. If your placenta is at the front, they usually
Mm.
don't
Do
recommend
that.
it, but my
Yeah.
Right.
placenta was in a good place. Like everything was looking good for it to work.
Work.
Yeah.
But of course, there is that scary, scary risk. And
Sure.
when your baby is right there about to be delivered, and then this
Hmm.
happens right before, of course, they're going to want me to just do a C-section
Yeah.
because
Right.
that's,
Such a
No.
that is
big
the most simple
procedure.
way to get the
Yeah.
baby out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
pyro appointment, you feel something going on.
I just have a little adjustment. I
Yeah.
go home overnight. I'm like feeling some funky little things. And then so I call my OB. I actually the next morning I had a long talk with the agency. We had our like case manager call. She spoke to the independent parents and they were just really wanting a C-section and they
Mhm.
were like wondering why I didn't. Um
What?
so
But it's a big procedure. That's a lot
it's
on
yeah,
you.
Major
it's big.
surgery. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's big, but
Huh.
I guess if you have never gone through like a full term pregnancy,
Yeah.
and she's had, friends and family that have had C-sections. They're all telling her like, oh no, like it won't be a big deal. So they were really thinking that I was just scared for a C-section.
No,
I I mean, I would hate to have a C-section,
yeah.
but
It's a big
I
deal.
just really, in this situation, it didn't make sense
And
for
the
me to
baby,
do
the
it.
baby was not at risk right now. The
Yeah,
baby
yeah,
just flipped. Like
Okay,
you have
yeah,
yeah,
neither
neither
of
of
you
you.
were at
yeah,
risk.
And you have
yeah.
several weeks really to go to term. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, we're 39.6. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
And like you said, she was born 5 pounds, and so
Yeah, she
that's
was
probably
little.
why she could flip because she was so little
Yeah.
and she had so
And
much room, so she could flip
she was a
back.
very
Yeah.
jumpy, kicky baby. So I was surprised, but also I'm like, it makes sense. Like,
Sure.
Yeah.
yeah. So, and
Okay.
I had a lot of fluid. Not, it wasn't like poly,
Mm.
so I didn't have too much, but I had a very good amount of fluid. I drink like a gallon of water a day. So,
Yeah. So she could swim.
naturally.
Yes.
Yeah, naturally.
Do her thing. Have
Yes.
fun.
So, the next morning I had that conversation with the
Yeah.
agency. There were a lot of tears on both sides. It was just like a very stressed. We were just so stressed,
Oh,
because it was just not what we
yeah.
were expecting. We
Right.
were not expecting her to flip. It was such a crappy move for her to just flip on us like
Yeah.
Yeah.
that.
Agreed.
Um, and it
Wow.
was crazy because I could feel her head at the top of my belly. I'm like, and I kept
Oh,
poking her like,
weird.
girl,
That
like
is
go
weird.
back,
Yeah.
please.
My
Um,
God.
yeah. So after that agency call, I told the agency, I'm like, something feels different with her positioning, and I felt
Hmm.
like felt some weird wiggles or something last night. So let me just call my OB and see if they'll just like let me run in real quick for
Okay.
them to do a quick ultrasound.
Yeah.
So I ran into the office that morning,
Hmm.
um, and she had flipped back.
Get out. She just wanted her presence known, and
Yeah.
she was going to create the
Yes.
drama
She
Yes.
wanted
for
to
her
know,
mama.
she wanted you all to know that she runs the show.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
runs the show. She's in control here. She
Cute.
makes everybody's day either good or bad. It's her
Yeah.
choice.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yes. So, and it was crazy because the induction was scheduled. It took a
Right.
lot. It's a big, big hospital, so
Yeah.
it took a lot to get it scheduled. And then,
Is this Sophia? Is this Wednesday or is this Thursday? What day are we at?
this was Wednesday.
Okay.
Wednesday
Okay.
morning.
Okay.
Wednesday morning, I go into the plan on Wednesday was
Wednesday
the
night.
next day, a
Yeah.
Thursday night, I was supposed to go in
Right.
for the ECV. Um,
Oh.
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
And for
so
the balloon too, for the induction, like if we're gonna go
yes,
down that way.
yeah,
Okay.
I was going to be admitted the next night.
Okay.
Yep. So then the plans changed again. The hospital was probably very annoyed at us
Oh, how
Oh,
because
funny.
the scheduler was calling back and forth because our schedule kept changing that week.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So it went from the plan being just a start of an induction Thursday night, actual induction Friday
Right.
morning, to an ECV Thursday night, possible C-section,
Yeah.
and then otherwise induction immediately after Thursday night, and I would be admitted
Okay.
to now the baby flipped. So now we could just plan to admit Friday morning for a regular induction.
Okay.
Um, because she was wiggly, we didn't want me to go home and then like she ends up flipping and then I come back like super in labor and then I have to do a C-section.
Yeah.
So they just admitted me. I didn't go home for part of the induction. I just stayed there.
That was safer.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The induction was like super easy.
Hmm.
I wasn't sure on whether to get the epidural. I figured I would probably want it because
Yeah.
Pitocin. Um, but the intended parents, they were in a hotel super close by, so they would like come and go and just kind of go home and rest or go to the
Oh.
hotel and rest a bit in between, so they didn't have to like sit there the whole time.
Huh.
It took a while. They did the balloon. They started me on oh my gosh, what's it called?
Pitocin? No.
Cervidil.
Oh,
Cervidil?
yeah, the
Yeah,
gel. Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
Cervidil. And then it was taking a while. I finally got to 4 centimeters, and then I was at 4 centimeters all night long. I ended
Oh
up
my
getting the epidural.
gosh.
I think they overdosed me on Pitocin. It was like too much to where my
Oh.
contractions were like 30 seconds apart
Oh
and
God.
very, very painful.
Oh
So I'm
my
like, just
gosh.
give me the epidural. Now I can like relax because I was about
Yeah.
to pass
And then
out. They
your
were very
body could relax and then it
Yeah.
could move
uh-huh.
along. Yeah.
Yes, but
Wow.
it was fun. It was fun. I love labor.
Oh my
It's
God,
really
me too. It's my
yes.
favorite part.
I like the nurses become my besties. We just like crack
Yeah.
jokes back and forth.
Yep.
We had a lot of fun. Yeah. It was very fun for me. I was like watching podcasts on my phone.
Oh my God.
Just it was just lots of fun. I love the labor and delivery unit. Yeah, my
Me
favorite.
too. I've been lucky too that
Yeah.
I've had the same nurse for all of my surrogate deliveries. So like I'll come in and
That is
she'll,
crazy.
yeah, her
You
name's
had
Katie. Yeah.
the same one, all
Wow.
three?
The blonde girl, I don't know if you remember her, but I remember her.
Yeah,
And
I
then
do
every
remember
time
her.
that I have a baby, I always tell my dad, "Hey, you need to bring like this bottle of wine." And I always give them like wine
For
because
Katie. Yeah.
yeah, like you
That
gotta
is
go. I have a
awesome.
girlfriend who's a nurse. I know. Like
Yeah.
you gotta kick back and relax. No, I love
Yeah.
labor.
Yeah. No, my delivery hospital is like a really big one, but we get an ocean view there, so it's like the
Oh,
cutest thing ever. Yes. And the
No.
ocean view is
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
ocean views never hurt. It's so
Never
yeah,
hurt.
relaxing.
no, my non-stress test appointments, oh my God, it was amazing. They would make me juice, they would get me ice water, I would kick my feet back in the recliner, and I just look at the ocean, like you could see the boats
So
going by.
nice.
It was
You know
awesome.
what I got to look at my NSTs? Four walls.
Right.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah,
really small room, and there was usually like
yeah.
somebody sitting next to me, and I didn't know who they were.
Yeah, I mean that's probably why my blood pressure was so good the whole time
There
after
you
my initial
go.
Probably.
diagnosis because I got to
Exactly.
view the ocean the whole time. Yeah, it was
Oh,
awesome.
dreams. Oh my
So,
gosh,
Yeah.
how
so
fun.
how long does the induction and labor take? Like you start Friday morning
So
and
we admitted at like 4 a.m. on Friday morning. I delivered at 8:27 a.m. on Saturday morning.
that's
So
not that bad.
Okay.
it took a while. However, the plan initially was for me to go home.
Yeah.
I was supposed to start it Thursday night. The plan was for me to go home,
Oh,
Hmm.
and have the
labor
balloon
at
in at
home.
home,
Yeah.
and that would pop out when I'm 4 centimeters. Then I would go back once it pops
Right.
out. So it
Okay.
would have been, the less of a hospital process. But like I said, I had a lot of fun, so I
Yeah.
was okay with it.
Yeah.
And I brought my best friend with me too. So we
Oh,
just had a lot of fun
fun.
time. Yeah. Yeah. And then yeah, so I was stuck at 4 centimeters all night.
Wow.
And then they checked me and I was like maybe closer to like 5. And then they came in like 5 minutes later. I was at 10. Like she was like about to pop out. I told them like I feel a lot of pressure, you guys. Like I really
Wow.
can feel her head right there. And yeah, so they had to, luckily the parents were there.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Good.
So they had to rush them in and then baby was just like ready to come after that.
Oh. So
So
the parents were in the room when you delivered.
Delivered.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Nice.
they were sitting, they had chairs by my shoulder, and
Okay.
then dad was planning to cut the cord, so they were just kind of waiting there.
Sure.
Mom was sitting with her little hospital gown and everything, ready to
Oh,
do a skin to
sweet.
skin.
Aw, very
Yep.
sweet.
And she popped out in maybe like 2, 3 pushes or something very
Go
quickly. I
girl.
pushed very quick. You tell me
Wow.
to push, that baby is coming
Right.
out. Like
Yeah.
I'm not,
It's such a
she's
relief.
not,
Yeah.
yeah,
To
yeah,
push.
yeah. So, yep, she popped
Do,
right out.
do
Mhm.
you hold her or does she go right to mom?
So what ended up happening, her cord was actually wrapped around her neck twice.
Wow.
Oh.
Probably because of the flipping, because she
Yeah.
was
Right.
crazy in there. They weren't concerned, like all her vitals were excellent. Her
It
output
wasn't
was
like tight and
great.
choking her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So they just had to slip her out, and then the parents wanted her to be cleaned up beforehand. So they just placed her on my
Yeah.
belly. The first thing we saw was she came out with icy blonde hair. It was so cool. I was not I was expecting her to have dark hair. She came
Wow.
out icy blonde. It was the first thing that we all saw. And I
Wow.
looked over then and the parents, I'm like, she's blonde. Like
How
she
funny.
yeah, yeah, icy blonde hair, like white eyelashes, like she looked like a snow queen, like she's beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So, yep, so she came out, everything was good. Intended mom was ready to take her. Dad cut the cord right
Okay.
after they cleaned her up and everything. They do automatic delayed cord clamping, so that was
Right.
about a minute or so before she
Sure.
went to mom.
Yeah.
Um, and then they placed her on mom's chest. The
Aw.
first thing mom said was, "She smells weird."
Ah,
Oh, how funny.
but she just came
I
out of
mean,
the vagina.
and
Like,
she,
it's
yeah,
okay.
and she was swimming in her own pee for 9 months. So,
For real.
yeah, yes.
She needs a bath.
That's a cute
Yes.
response from a new mom. That's
Yes, it
cute.
was
That is
so
cute.
That's
cute.
cute.
It was so cute. That was the most special moment of my life looking
Yeah.
over and
Oh,
seeing her there holding her
oh,
baby for the first time.
so
I
sweet.
felt it felt like such a relief. Like we had
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
such a stressful week,
Yeah.
and the fact
Yeah.
that she just popped out like that, beautiful and healthy, was such a relief, such a relief.
Yeah.
And I feel like as a surrogate, that moment is like it's like all of the weight of the world comes off of you.
Yep.
Like the elephant
Mhm.
sitting on your chest the whole time comes off of you, and like your
Mhm.
Yep.
responsibility is over. Like you're just
Yeah.
good. You
Yep.
get to see what you have been waiting this whole time to
Mhm.
see the whole time. Anybody who goes through like failed transfers or
Yeah.
like a
Right.
2 year long journey getting to delivery,
Yeah.
it's just such a relief. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. Also, check out the link to our YouTube channel in the description. And be sure to also check out our children's book, My Mom Has Superpowers, sold on Amazon and Etsy.